Thank you. The time is 7 o'clock, and we're ready to start the Raytown Board of Aldermen meeting. This is August 2nd, 2011. This is the regular session number 8. Tonight we're pleased to have with us Steve Jones, who is with the Brooking Heights Baptist Church, and Steve will lead us in the invocation and Pledge of Allegiance.
Let's pray. Father in heaven, I thank you for once again we have the opportunity, Lord, to stand before you. Thank you for each one here that has taken on the obligation approaching these things that are going to either better, Father, or correct our community. So, Father, I thank you for the opportunity we have to have these leaders before us elected, Father, to do these things. And, Father, they have an awesome responsibility that they are here chosen to lead this city in a way that it would be pleasing to you. And so, Father, I thank you for that. Heavenly Father, we ask now your blessings on these proceedings, and we ask your leadership, all these things. In I pray. Salute, pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, if I could have the company of Miss Pam Clark McKinley at the podium, please. This past week, or I guess actually a week and a half ago, the Missouri Municipal League Westgate chapter, of which we are a part of with a number of our area communities, asked us to name a citizen or a civic leader within our community, business leader within our community, who represented in our minds, the council mind and my mind, best represents the city, not only in this community but in the metropolitan area as well. It didn't take us too long to gather our thoughts on that, and basically very quickly arrived at the fact that this young lady, Pam Clark McKinley, meets all those requirements. This plaque was given to her that night. We had 4 aldermen in attendance at that meeting. It was Alderman Mock, Alderman Buster, Alderman Whitefoot. I believe Alderman Ertz was there as well. A complete surprise to her, I hope. Point that she even rejected Mock's hand when he asked her to go join him receive the plaque. And I think most of us in the room can understand your hesitation. But nonetheless, we are pleased that to bestow upon certificate of appreciation to Pam Clark, half of Raytown from Missouri Municipal League Westgate Chapter, Civic Leader of the Year. I promised you one other item tonight, Pam, if I could come to this meeting. That's a proclamation. Whereas Pam Clark McKinley has been serving the city of Raytown as a business leader and volunteer for many years, I point out a second-generation business leader, Clark's clients. Pam Clark McKinley has tirelessly committed her time and efforts to promote the rights and interests of the members of our community, the betterment of Raytown and its citizens. Pam continues a strong tradition of second-generation business owner in Raytown and has been an active member of the Raytown Area Chamber of Commerce, serving two full 3-year terms as past chairman of the board. Pam also serves as co-chairman of the Raytown Summerfest and Barbecue Cook-Off, is active with the Raytown Main Street Association, and is dedicated to the advancement of our community from sun up to sundown. On July 21st, Pam was presented the Civic Leadership Award by the Missouri Municipal League in recognition of her exceptional service as civic leader for the city of Raytown. Whereas the city of Raytown's greatest resource is to have citizens like Pam Clark McKinley who are committed to our business and community service, I, David Bauer, Mayor of Raytown, do hereby recognize and express grateful appreciation of the citizens of Raytown to Pam Clark McKinley for dedicated service to the community. On behalf of the board, thank you very much for all you do for our community.
I was totally, completely surprised. I really thought I was there representing Main Street, so it was a complete surprise. I really want to thank Steve and Michael and Pat and Phil. They were great hosts, and this is a great honor. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Those are fun to do, and even more fun when they're completely surprised. Ask the clerk at this time to call the roll, please.
Alderman Ager.
Here.
Alderman Mock.
Here.
Alderman Hamilton.
Excused.
Alderman Ertz.
Excused.
Alderman White.
Here.
Alderman Kramer.
Here.
Alderman Lightfoot.
Here.
Alderman Pardue.
Excused.
Alderman Van Buskirk.
Here.
Alderman Nelson.
Here.
We still have a quorum. Okay, at this time I'm going to call upon those who have signed up in the category of public comments to address the Board of Aldermen on issues that may pertain to city business at this time. And first on the list is our good friend Andy Whiteman. Evening, Andy.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Board of Alder people. Actually, it seems kind of hot in here. Is your air conditioning out? At the last meeting, I stated the signatures on the petition for the long-term care center should be verified. After the meeting, I was notified that the petitions were notarized and signatures of non-property owners were deleted. This fact should have been stated at the public hearing rather than just stating there's a petition. I noticed you're having another secret meeting at an early hour. I think it is public because it is on cable TV for the rich. But then again, this is dinner time. It was stated by the Raytown report that several older people were absent from the last 6 p.m. session and were clueless as to what transpired. You may be unaware that some older people work a real job while others own businesses. Employers dislike those who leave work early on a regular basis. Also, most of the peasants work day hours, and 6 p.m. is too early to eat dinner and get to a meeting. I appreciate Mr. Levius, who writes the minutes for the Raytown report. We have a print publication, but Wednesday is past the deadline of the current publication. Any news of board activity that may be published is no longer news by the time of the publication. We are under a ring of fire here in the state of misery. I was first noticed that my air conditioner went out on 1 a.m. on a Friday morning. It was Friday before last. When the unit was examined, I was told I needed a new unit which could not be obtained until Monday night. My house heated up Friday night, and my bedroom was 98 degrees, while the rest of the house was 87. I woke up Saturday morning very dehydrated and called 911 to find out if the city had a list where air conditioning units could be obtained in an emergency. The dispatcher was clueless. I am sure this is an issue everywhere, not in the region, not just Raytown. The city should maintain a list of heating and cooling suppliers for both heat and cold emergencies. I finally called my repairman and told him I found it hard to believe that it's impossible to get an AC unit in an emergency. Larry did some calling around. Thanks to local HVAC service expert Larry Edwards, my air conditioning unit was running a little after 10 p.m. Friday. The city should maintain a list for emergencies where parts may be obtained. Any HVAC supplier receiving a city business license should be required to maintain a 24/7 call-out availability for emergencies, even if they're not open to the public during that time. These are emergency situations the city needs to resolve. I have worked 24/7 places. I don't accept weekends as excuse. You just let people die because it's the weekend? That's ridiculous. There is another issue. All city departments not listed in the small Raytown phone book. I needed the non-emergency number of EMS and had to call the non-emergency number of the police to get it. That is not their job. I sent emails regarding the phone listings to the mayor and to several department heads. I received responses from Chief Lynch and Matt Cushman. That leaves me with the impression that the others could care less. This issue needs to be addressed before the publication of the next phone book. If the city is paying for the listings, then the city is due a refund or billing adjustment. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Okay, next we've got another good friend of this city's, Jan Wynn. Evening, Jan.
Thank you and good evening, and thank you all for doing such a great job for our great city. You're all wonderful. I've been involved in, many of you are aware, I'm doing a pilot program called the Let's Move program, and it's to help fight childhood obesity. And we're going to have August 11th this at our at the church across the street. The camp kids that have been in all summer, and it's been a great success. It's a program through the White House to help fight childhood obesity. The goal is to get other communities. I know Raytown cares about its kids. And if we can catch them at a young age and show them fitness and health is fun, it's easier to combat obesity at the young age than the latter. And they're going to be in the church parking lot August 11th at 4 o'clock. We'd like to invite the Board of Aldermen and your families to come meet the camp kids and be with us for a few minutes and just we're going to show other communities that Raytown cares about its children, and we want to help fight childhood obesity. It's a free program that we are doing for Raytown District School students, so it doesn't matter if you can afford to dance or not. It's free of charge, so anybody kindergarten through 12th can take advantage. So thank you very much, and we hope to see you guys August 11th.
Thank you.
And you're all doing a wonderful job. Thanks.
Thanks, Jan. Appreciate it. Okay, would anyone else in the audience like to address the board at this time? Okay, we're going to move on. I want to talk very briefly about a couple of things. One, this event that Jan just addressed, I do hope the board will join me there Thursday. I know at 4 o'clock, a lot of us do have day jobs that sometimes interfere with our course of elected officials, but that's quite an event that she's put together, a lot of support. I think we're also going to see a lot of the metropolitan area elected leaders there as well. It has gained quite a bit of interest and recognition through the other cities that surround us as well. We will be delivering a proclamation to Jan on behalf of the board at that time as well. So I'd ask that if you can make it, please plan to do so, and hope that those in the audience at home and here in the council chambers will join us as well. The other thing I want to get accomplished tonight too, we've got several. We've been mulling over committees and board liaisons. As many of you know, we've gone to a work session format, which means that we essentially did away with municipal committee and finance committee, and we have a regular stated work session every council meeting at 6 o'clock prior to the 7 o'clock meeting. We've had one, I think the last 2 meetings. We didn't have enough of an agenda item last time that we did not have one at the previous meeting. But that's a new format that we're trying to adapt here. I think it's working well. We had a good attendance tonight. We're getting through issues that basically we talk through them in advance. The items we talked about tonight will be on the agenda for the next meeting or the one after that, but the intention is to get that communication out to the board. It's viewed in the audience as well, and there's always a packet available for citizens to look at too. So we've got that underway. With that, we still have one other standing committee that wants to be renamed on that, and that is the Legislative Committee. And tonight I'm asking that Alderman Lightfoot, Alderman Azier, Alderman Pardue, Alderman White, and Alderman Ertz work with the chair, Michael Lightfoot, on Legislative Committee at this time. So I hope that'll go into effect at this time tonight. I'd also like to talk about a couple of other committees that we talked at our recent work session, that there will be times from periodically where we need to bring several aldermen or more than 2 aldermen together, perhaps with other citizens and other staff, to help us address issues that are before us. Therefore, we want to form a subgroup to address and or assist to resolve the situation and the expression of interest in certain issues at that time. Tonight, I'd like to name two subgroups to that. I'd like to establish a group for the Police Pension Review Fund. actually not the Police Pension Review Fund. I'd like to set it up for the Police Pension Plan Review. I'm asking that Alderman Ertz, who has expressed an interest in working on that, to join that commission or that subgroup. Alderman Melson has expressed an interest as well. Alderman Hamilton has as well. And I'm asking Alderman Van Buskirk to join in that effort. The police pension plan has not been reviewed by the Board of Aldermen in any real significance since 2003. This plan, as with any benefit package, affords the employees of the city. It's an important plan, benefits package for the citizens, for our police officers, and warrants a thorough review on a periodic basis. Many changes have taken place over the last 8 years regarding the economy, investment opportunities, and the structure of the current plan itself. As is good practice, and as it affects the city's annual budget, a thorough review is warranted of the structure and administration of the plan. Following the review, suggested changes should be brought to the attention of the Board of Aldermen and the plan modified/restructured as is warranted. I'm going to ask that those named, if they are so inclined, to join that effort, and I believe all of them have said they would. We'll start that process immediately by reaching out to the chief and asking for a meeting set up immediately on that. The second subgroup I'd like to establish tonight is, we're calling it for no other better purpose, review of the park board governance structure. I've asked Alderman Kramer, who is the liaison to that board, Alderman Mock, and Alderman White-Kinman to join me in that. For a number of years, there's been uncertainty amongst this board as far as the relationship between the Board of Aldermen and the Park Board itself regarding governance. This committee shall research the organizational structure of the Park Board as believed to be prescribed by the state law, as well as the city statutes and the Parks Board's own bylaws. Then to derive and communicate expectations of the Board of Aldermen that the Board of Aldermen may have, Parks Department and Parks Board, and resolve those expectations, roles, and responsibilities, placing them into effect in the future. Essentially, at the end of the day, we want to make sure that this board understands what the roles and responsibilities are of the Park Board and vice versa, and of course to make sure that the board continues to function in the excellent manner that they have done over the past number of years. And we look for this board to administrate our Parks Department, who has done an excellent job for us over the years as well. So those are the two I'd like to get going with that tonight, and unless there's any opposition to that, consider it done.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Kramer.
On the police pension issue, I noticed we didn't have a Ward 1 representative for the police pension issue. Is that your intent, or?
I didn't really set aside to try to get a cross-section of every ward represented on these two committees. I really was sensitive. I think the time frame that we're going to have to meet with those, most of the police are on, I want to say watch, but they got regular duty, so it may be difficult to meet with them in an evening, so I've been kind of cautious about the time of day for that meeting. I'm not set. There could be an extension of that, but I also want to keep other things going as well. I know that you and Shane would both make excellent candidates for that. I know you're going to be involved with the Park Board as well, and frankly, I haven't had a chance to talk to Shane about it to see, but my plan is to stay with those that we've got. We can always make changes as we need to on that, but thank you for bringing that up. Okay, and with that, no more opposition. I'm going to go to Mahesh for communication from the City Administrator.
Good evening, Mayor Bauer and Board of Aldermen. For the record, I'm just going to read a letter received regarding the water main break on 5520 Railroad from Neil Clevenger. It states, "Dear Mr. Sharma, we are writing this letter to commend the quick response by our Raytown Police Department and the city's Public Works Department when we needed to repair a major water break at the above reference address. When the call was made to inform the different parties, they responded quickly with the police assistance in traffic control and the placing of cones by the Public Works Department. Their help and quick response helped us tremendously. We thought that it was great that the different entities serving the people of Raytown worked so well together." Signed by Neil Clevenger, President, General Manager, Raytown Water Company. Also, I would like to give an update to the board regarding the Community Development Director, the job that was placed for recruitment. That job has no deadline, which means it's open until filled. However, we made a July 22nd as the cutoff date for first review, and I just like to inform the board that we received several applications, in fact more than 50 for the position. The staff will review those applications and shortlist the candidate that we would like to conduct telephone interview in the next few weeks, and later on shortlist further for face-to-face interview. Also wanted to inform the board that our Economic Development Administrator Tom Cole gave a presentation to the Raytown Chamber monthly luncheon, and that was very well received, and a lot of people attended that particular event. On the 2012 budget, I just wanted to inform the board that budget preparation is underway. Majority of the department heads submitted their initial budget request. I will, along with the finance director, will review those requests and have a sit-down conversation with department head in the next couple of weeks. Hopefully, we will refine the request, and it will be brought for your consideration during the work session, and later on, the plan for work session is in September, and we'll bring the budget for adoption in October. With that, I will conclude my report.
Very good. Thank you, Mahesh. Going to committee reports, Mr. Mock, Council on Aging.
Yes, Council on Aging will meet on the 18th at 4 o'clock here.
Mr. Lightfoot, Legislative.
As I've reported at the previous meeting, we've been working on the redistricting issues at the state level, and we've been in contact with Gary Cross and Tom McDonald, two of our state legislators who have helped us in our decision to make our own map that we're going to submit. We've got the full consensus of the board and mayor, so we've got everybody on board with the way we think it would be best suited for Raytown's representation.
Michael, I want to inform you, and I apologize for not having done it yet, but the city of Raytown, I co-signed a letter with mayors from St. Louis and Kansas City that went to the U.S. Congress regarding the latest debt issue. So we joined at the request of the Missouri Municipal League and Mayor's Conference of the U.S. In that, so the city did participate with that. I'll have a copy of that if you'd like to see that. Thank you. Any other committee reports? Okay. Next, we've got the study session, and I think they are feverishly working on the presentation still at this time. I ask Bob Smith will be here tonight, as Bob is our Park Board President. With him is Kevin Bogie. Raytown Park Board presentation. Are we ready to go, gentlemen? Want to tap dance a little bit, Joe Willerth, in the meantime? Well done, Joe. Any good stories from vacation, Joe, while we're...
Pleased the alderman let me take a week off in Alaska, and it was certainly interesting that the temperature today at 111 was the temperature the last 2 days in Alaska added together, 55 and 56.
Bob, are you ready to go? How much longer do we have to listen to Joe?
All right.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, introduced to the public, Bob Smith, our Park Board President at Raytown Park Board.
Good evening, Mayor, Board of Aldermen. Unfortunately, we don't have the PowerPoint working yet, so we'll go ahead and start. You all should have handouts ahead of time. To start out with, why are we here? The state statute, city ordinance specifies that the board of directors shall make an annual report to the city council stating the condition of the trust. In the past, the budget process has been used to fulfill that purpose. But tonight we thought we'd there were some other things we thought we ought to bring forward, make sure everybody's aware of, such as what is happening within Parks and Recs. Provide a structure of the Park Board and the Parks Department. Some highlights from the past year, the financial condition of the parks, and some challenges that we've got coming up. Excuse me. From the org chart, I'm not going to go through all of this, but we start out with the citizens of Raytown on the top. Oh, we're getting it there.
Yeah, we got it.
We're getting real close. Okay.
As much as the audience, Bob, would like to see you, I'm going to ask that the camera be focused on the screen, please. She's got it.
Continuing on, we've got the citizens of Raytown on the top, then we've got the mayor, board of aldermen. Underneath of that is the Raytown Park Board, and under that is the park staff, which is Kevin Bogie as the director. We have 4 different departments within the park system: park operations, aquatics, program, and administrative. And each one of those has got their own own supervisor. For the park board, we've got the 9 members, myself as president, Terry Landers as vice president, John Atkins, Shauna Barnes, Michael Hanna, George Mitchell, Michelle Sipes, Aaron Smith, and Barbara Sleed. And just information, Barb Sleed has elected not to continue next year, just for information. The park board is made up of, or has 4 standing committees: personnel, program, finance, and buildings and grounds. And each park board member is assigned to 2 committees, and they meet as necessary, primarily, especially during the budget process. The park administrative staff, again, is administrative, program, aquatics, and parks division, which is actually the park maintenance group. Each one of these has got a mission statement. I'm not going to read through each one of these. You've got those so that you can look through them. The park board also has a group that they partner with. We have the tree board, Bryce Tremonti, BMX, the Girls Softball League, and Friends of the Park. Each one of these has got their own mission statement also. There are some things that I do want to mention about some of these. For example, the tree board, they got a citation of merit this year, which was awarded for the 2011 Missouri Arbor Award of Excellence. They also, and I would invite you, if you haven't, to go out to Kritzer Park. The tree board is assisted in putting up 33 different signs on trees, which shows what the tree is and gives a little description about each one of them. So I would invite everybody to go out and just walk around the trail and take a look at those. Also, since year 2000, the tree board has hosted the Raytown Arbor Day celebration for 2nd and 3rd grade classes at one of the local elementary schools. So they move from one school to another each year to and provide a program. Bryce Tremonti, which is the oldest house in town. We should all know what that is, and invite everybody to go to some of their events that they have. Again, all of these places have got websites out that you can take a look at and see what the programs are. And they're also, generally, you can pick up brochures most any place. Rice Tremonti typically has, I believe, 4 events a year, 4 big events each year. BMX. The BMX, this is the 12th season in operation for BMX. It is located out off of Frost Road. It's at the old Raytown High School, Raytown School District driving range. They have made some changes, and this year I believe their ridership, as last I heard, was up quite a bit. They are also going to be hosting for the second year in a row the 2011 Red Lions Central Final, for the which is September the 9th and through the 11th. This race will draw about 800 BMX riders from across the central region, which will include Colorado, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas, Missouri, Illinois, Arkansas, and Oklahoma. This brings a lot of revenue into Raytown, and you know, this is one of the places, if we had a nice big hotel someplace down here, why, we'd probably fill it up. It is open to the public for a $5 parking fee. Girls softball, they play out at Little Blue Trace. They've been out there since 1982, I believe. That is a park that we lease, that is leased from Jackson County. It is located in Kansas City, and it's right next to the soccer club, so it gets a lot of use out there. They could host the Ann Harrison tournament each year, which this year was June the 17th to the 19th. And there's no gate fees associated with this, but they take donations, and since this has been running, they have donated over $100,000 to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. So this tournament really draws a lot of people out there. The last group is the Friends of the Park. This is an organization that has been started in 2008. We've really been struggling trying to get up and going, trying to get members signed up, and to be able to work with that has been a real issue. But hopefully we can get it, we're going to stay with it, and we're going to try to make it work. Okay, next is just a list of all of the parks. We have Super Splash, Coleman Park, Coleman Living Good Park, Carnegie, Southwood, Minor Smith, BMX Track, Little Blue Trace, Rice Tremonti House, and Kritzer. One that is not on this list that is really not an active park, which is the Southwood Lagoon area, which is also considered supposed to be a park. I think there was some money went into that from the state, one of the state grants for park. Maintained right-of-way areas. There are 7 welcome to Raytown signs. There's 5 flower beds here around City Hall. Got the Power Trees, which is at the northeast corner of 59th and Raytown Road, along beside the Boy Scout headquarters of, and I don't remember what troop that is, on Raytown Traffic Way between 59th and 63rd. There's trees along that side. We have the Santa Fe Trail Triangle, which is at Blue Ridge Boulevard and Blue Ridge Cutoff landscape. We've got the Eubank Fountain, which is out in front of City Hall here, 59th and Raytown Road. The Pocket Park, Raytown Road, 63rd. The Railroad Bridge, Raytown Road, Raytown Traffic Way. The West Gateway, which is the 63rd and Blue Ridge Cutoff. We have the Center Gateway, which is Gregory. This is one of the new ones, Gregory and Raytown Road. 63rd Street Bridge. The traffic islands north and south on Raytown Traffic Way at 63rd Street. And we have a traffic island at 63rd and Ditzler. Some of the parks highlights. Raytown has a total of 171 acres of parks, and there are 63 of those, 63 acres of undeveloped, which is the Southwood Lagoon. The national standard for a city of our size says that we should have 638 plus acres of park space. So we're way under that. Next is again the list of the parks. We've got 10 full-time employees plus 120 plus part-time employees. We support the Raytown youth groups, organizations, Rice Tremonti Board, again, and BMX and the tree boards. And through the tree board, they encourage reforestation of Raytown with trees. Super Splash has had about 41,000 guests in 2010 and hired, again, 120 youth, putting tax dollars back into the city. Some of the programs for the kids and youth and families. We have youth tennis lessons, youth volleyball lessons, youth golf lessons. The fishing derby, which was a great success this year, is probably one of the best we've had. Kids Day at the Park, or at Carnegie. That is a big event, and we have more people, kids there this year than what we've ever had, and it was a real hit. We host O'Hara High School tennis teams, youth sports field reservations for baseball, girls softball, youth soccer, football, and swim lessons. And we have family night at Super Splash, birthday parties at Super Splash, which is there. We have a lot of birthday parties up there. We have a lot of daycare groups up at Super Splash, and we've had movies in the park. Some of the projects. We just replaced the bridge at Minor Smith Park for a total cost of roughly $188,000. Those that haven't seen that, encourage you to take a look at it. There will be a dedication for that on September the 10th. So you might mark your calendar for that. We replaced 3 of our old vehicles this past year. We replaced Super Splash, our photo ID system, and we added 2 additional right-of-way areas, which were the Center Gateway and 63rd Street Bridge this year. We secured a 65% voter approval to extend the 8-cent sales tax. And the Park Board is currently evaluating a proposal for repair of the Coleman Park tennis courts. Those are estimated at this time to be somewhere over $250,000 to repair those. Park Board continues implementing its strategic plan. which began back in January of 2006. Some of the major maintenance areas that we've done this year at Super Splash was Pebble Beach in the 50-meter pool. At the Super Splash, ongoing maintenance Super Splash includes painting 2 pools and replacing deck over Jackson Hole. And shelter house rentals over the park system has been very popular. In fact, on January the 2nd, the phone is ringing so much that they come in early and they have multiple people there taking reservations that early or down into the year. Some of the financial conditions, the budget process is pretty much the same as most budget processes. Each department develops their request for justifications. The department director reviews those, and then it goes to the park board committees, which reviews those and may add some things to those. And then it goes to the full board, and then to the Board of Aldermen once it's approved by the full board. Final budget process represents ongoing operations, fund reserve, and fund reserve balances in capital projects. The only overage that the park board has allowed to date has been in the right-of-way maintenance, beautification area. When we passed this with the voters, we had indicated that we would go up to 20% of the sales tax for right-of-way, and the last 2 years we've been right at 30%, and this next year it looks like we're going to be even higher than that. The reserve funds, the purpose of the reserve fund is to annually bank monies based on estimated replacement cost and expected life. These monies are tracked by item, such as a particular truck or mower or whatever that might happen to be. And typically that appropriation is about $155,000 a year. The following reserve fund numbers are this is from the 2010-11 budget. On the equipment fund, there is approximately, it covers about 24 pieces of equipment. This would be major type equipment for a balance of $204,156. Our facilities, which covers most of the playground equipment, Carnegie tennis courts, ball fields, parking lot lights, new shelters, restrooms, not to include Super Splash. There are 23 items in there for a total of $347,160. And the last one is the pool fund, which contains most of the equipment at Super Splash. There's actually 58 items in there. We've got a total of $660,095. The board authorized borrowing from the reserve funds for the following items. Rice Tremonti, we loaned them $60,000 in 2008 to purchase property to the east of the Rice Tremonti home. This was a 10-year loan to the Rice Tremonti board, and they make monthly payments to us to repay that. The bridge replacement at Minor Smith, here again, we took money from the reserve funds, and we will not put money back into the reserve funds until this expense has been covered. Board also authorized borrowing money from these for the tennis courts at Coleman Living Good. Again, we have a grant application in. We're waiting for the grant to come back, see if we're going to get anything there, and if so, how much, and then we'll have to decide how we're going to move forward with this. This is a very expensive item. $200,000 to $400,000. And as I mentioned, these reserve funds will be paid back out of our annual fund appropriations. As of June 1, 2011, following is based on our Parks and Recs budget report. We had revenues of $1,452,000. Revenues year to date was $758,000, which gives us a total revenue balance of $2,210,000. On the expense side, we've got $1,172,000 in reserve funds. We have $538,000 in expenditures, with an expense balance of $1,710,000, which leaves us with a balance revenue less expenses of $500,000. Some of the challenges that we work with, programs, they continue to decline in participation in all age groups. Individual activities such as tennis, Kids at Carnegie, those continue to be very popular. Programs such as Movies in the Park, and we tried to sponsor some bus trips, that we never did get enough to even have one of those. Movies in the Park, we had, this last one was approximately 160 people attended. We're evaluating whether the cost of those is really enough that we can continue those in the future. We continue to cope with vandalism in the park. Last year we had approximately $30,000 in park vandalism, and this does not include some of our labor cost. So that continues to be a major item. Maintenance is becoming an issue ongoing because of aging facilities. And we try to work with how and what services programs to provide. We try different things, see what works, what doesn't work, and we go from there. Increased demand on staff, which has not increased in over 10 years. We are backups to some of the finance department functions. Not sure which ones those are. Helping with snow removal, trees in the park in Raytown, and right-of-way maintenance. Securing suitable open space within the community and or existing parks for new park facilities. Fortunately or unfortunately, I guess, not only is that an issue, but we don't have the money to do anything if we had. We couldn't buy it if we had it. So it kind of goes both ways. We're conserving sufficient capital expenditure funds to develop new parks and facilities while maintaining the existing park facilities. Provide a system of crosstown linkages, which would include walking bicycle trails and connecting our system to the Metro Green Trail system. This is one that we feel which would be very useful and helpful, and a lot of people would use it if we had this something similar to this. And then sustaining success in obtaining federal state grants to help fund park renovations and development. And last is Super Splash. The last 2 years we've been level to decreasing head counts, actually since our high of 2003. We have increased competition. Each year there's been a lot of water parks. When we first opened, we were the first one, we were the only one in this area. And now they're all over every place, so we've got a lot of competition there. Also, schools are going later in the year, and they're also starting earlier. So we're running about 2 weeks less during the summer now because of the school years. And the weather has not been in our favor the last few years. Last year it was cold, this year it's hot. And believe it or not, when it gets as hot as it is, it's almost as bad as being rainy and cold. The people just can't, they're not going to be there. We've cut our staff down to minimal levels in order to try to maintain expenses. And just as a reference point, our revenues have gone from $208,000 profit in 2003 down to last year we had a loss of $16,000. So that's quite a range in that period of time. We have not added any new attractions of recent. And partly the reason why is we have limited space for new attractions because what we would need to put in if we're going to do something is going to be a pretty good size attraction, and it's also very expensive. We're probably looking at something in the area of $750,000 for an attraction that would be worth putting in. So then becomes cost recovery. Can we recover our costs? So we've got to look at that in relationship to our other competition, see what we can do. So we've got some tough decisions to make. You know, do we close parts of the pool? Do we shorten hours to try to cut down on staff? Do we attempt to try to sell it off to a private party if that's even possible? Or do we just close it and sell off the equipment? Or do we do something else? We don't really know at this point. It's things that we've got to look at, but we know that we've got to do something because, you know, we're just not... Super Splash was not put in to lose money. It was put in to make or break even at best. So, if there's any questions, I'll be willing to try to answer any questions. If not...
Questions, Ms. White?
I have a few questions. Please just indulge me a minute while I go backwards here. On page 34, you talked about providing a system of crosstown linkages. Has that been mapped out?
There was, I believe, a very preliminary map that was done some time ago. It's probably would have to be reviewed at this point in time.
Okay.
Because I'm thinking that was probably 3, maybe 4 years ago.
On page 33, under your challenges, you talk about programs like Movies in the Park and sponsored bus trips. And frankly, I don't remember any type of advertising for bus trips. I know that there was some, I think there was a little bit in the paper for Movies in the Park. I'm wondering what type of marketing has been used in the last few years? Has the board looked at perhaps speaking to someone about different ways to market?
We have not done any outside marketing for the like Movies in the Park. We do for Super Splash. As far as advertising, we tried to put it in, we went through 3 years there, we didn't have a paper. We've got it on our website. We put it out at the, on our sign, the big sign out at Carnegie. It's along Raytown Road. We put it, it was posted at all of the, or most all of at least the grocery stores, every place we could. We put up, you know, like an advertising piece of paper. So we was doing what we could without, you know, everything we could think of.
Okay. When you talk about the grants that have been applied for the Coleman tennis courts, what's the timeline on those? Like when is the cutoff? When do you expect to know anything?
I don't know. I don't think we know because
The state is waiting on federal funds,
Okay,
and that's the response that we get from FEMA.
okay. My other question is, you talked about replacing 3 aging department vehicles at a cost of $51,000. What kind of vehicles were those?
those were the pickup trucks that the staff uses for things like right-of-way. I don't remember. They're just the overall the maintenance vehicles.
Ford Rangers that we use for right-of-way maintenance and park maintenance, and trash runs in the morning for each park shelter is parked.
Okay. And then I recall seeing a photo from one of our constituents a little while ago. They had a problem with the restrooms at the parks. Is that just aging? Is it an aging issue, I guess, or is it a lot of vandalism in the restrooms in our park system?
The question is in reference to Carnegie Park and the restroom facilities, public facilities. That building was constructed that was identified in the photo sometime in the late 60s. And those are aging restrooms. They have tile finishes. They have what we would call a industrial type of restrooms. They are stainless steel. They do not have lids. We've had no luck at all keeping those bathrooms in a condition that most folks would consider acceptable. So they are essentially prison restrooms. Stainless steel sinks, stainless steel toilets, and so forth. And that, I think, is a challenge to us to keep those attractive and appealing to the public. We do our very best with those, and I think that's something that we're working on. But there are newer restrooms just across the parking lot from those that were identified in the picture. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Melson.
I have a few questions. While you have covered some of the financial conditions on 30 through 33, there's no financials reported as in a financial statement of what the park board has as far as cash on hand and investments and stuff like that. Will that be provided to the board?
I believe that is in don't you get that as part of your budget report package? See that on a monthly basis?
Well, in this package, there isn't any type of financials.
No, in our package, there is not. But
right.
From the city, do you not get a budget report that has the financial?
That would be a good question. I don't recall seeing that recently, and perhaps you can just answer, how much does, because I was trying to figure that out when you were going through here, is how much cash on hand does the park board have in their fund?
Total cash to include what we've got in the amortization, our reserve funds?
Well, I guess it would be more, I don't know. So there's two different funds. You have cash on hand, and then you also have reserve funds?
Well, if you're looking at cash on hand that we could just go out and buy something with that's not is not specified for a specific purpose, it's somewhere around I'm going to say $150,000.
Okay, so on this, because there was something in here where it said that you had the balance revenue less expense, 500 grand.
Right.
On page 32.
Yes.
So is that the cash that you have on hand? And as of what date is that?
That's as of June 1st.
Of June 1st of this year? So that would be the cash on hand that the park board has available.
And and part of that is designated for purposes such as salaries, things of that type, where the expenses have not come in yet.
Okay. And so then there's a reserve fund.
Right.
Okay, and so how much is in the reserve fund?
It's
660 plus 159. The equipment, facilities, and pool reserve funds are identified in the report.
So that's 1.311411.
60.
1,300,411. I mean, that's on page 30, so you add up all those, that'd be the 1 million or 1.3 million?
Right.
Okay, so that is what you have in reserves.
Correct.
Okay, and so then where is that kept? I mean, is that just in a bank, like at a regular investment kind of thing with?
Mingled with our park general fund.
It's commingled?
Yes, they're all together. We identify those separate. The park board identifies 3 separate reserve funds.
Okay.
And has dollars allocated towards replacement of specific equipment or trucks and so forth. However, those dollars are not separated from the park general fund. They are all combined, commingled together.
Okay.
Does that make, is that clear?
So, like with that 1.3 million, you've got like 304,000 for 24 pieces of major equipment for Super Splash.
Correct.
And so, will you be spending that then?
No. The money is set aside each year. We build up a fund. For example, the replacement of an attraction at Super Splash may cost us $85,000. I'm thinking of Jackson Hole, for example.
Right.
We set aside dollars each year until we reach that predetermined number that the park board feels will replace that piece of equipment. Then after its expected life expectancy, we will replace that equipment.
Okay, so then with the 304,000, have you planned out then to buy new pieces of equipment with that money? And so that money will be decreasing in next year's when
That's
you start
exactly right.
Start appropriating it.
Right. The park board determined that the bridge at Minor Smith Park needed to be replaced. It was an urgent issue.
Right.
So that took priority over all other spending. We just decided that we would allocate funds towards that, even though it's not identified in our reserve funds. So we took money from other accounts to pay for the bridge at Minor Smith. That's not something the park board has done before.
Okay. But then that bridge, I thought you said earlier that there was loans or something on that bridge.
Well, we will put money back into that fund to help put those accounts back to the levels that they were prior to spending for that bridge. Does that make sense?
I don't know.
Okay.
Because if you're taking money out for, let's say it's $50,000 for that bridge.
Okay.
And then you took it out of this account, so then I can see that you got to replace that $50,000. But if you took out a loan to pay that $50,000, then why would you do that?
The park board doesn't have any debt of any kind. Hasn't for 15 years. There's no loans out.
Okay, so there was no loan.
Money was taken out of the reserve funds, the park general fund, to pay for the bridge.
Okay, so the bridge is paid for. There's
Right.
no loans on it.
Cash.
Cash.
Paid
Okay.
100%.
Okay. So then what you've got listed then on page 30 for the reserve fund, that would be what your strategic plan is eventually for those amounts? For the 304 is the 24 pieces of equipment for Super Splash? And then 347 is, you've got 23 items for the playgrounds, the tennis courts and such? And then Super Splash, which is contents most equipment, So those are items that you're trying to buy eventually?
Eventually, as their life expectancy is reached, we will replace those items. However, we've delayed purchases for years.
Right.
We've got tractors from 1983 and park shelters that need to be updated, and we've pushed those items back.
Right.
Delayed maintenance or delayed replacement so we can allocate funds where the priorities are. We have parking lots that need to be overlaid at Super Splash and at Coleman and Carnegie. Those items have been pushed back.
Well, I do remember
Deferred
being on
maintenance.
the board liaison as the Coleman tennis courts were even discussed 3 years ago or whatever
Right.
it was.
Right.
You know, and so I know that those have been delayed because of the cost that it eventually would do that.
And now the park board is starting to spend some of those reserve dollars to maintain critical infrastructure.
And how do you define what the critical infrastructure needs are?
The park board building and grounds committee meets, and we go through our capital improvement list, our 5-year plan, and determine what's the highest priority. That's where the dollars go.
Okay, and so that list is also not provided in here? I mean, as far as the capital improvement plan of like your 5 top item kind of
I'll be
thing?
happy to get you a copy of that.
Okay.
The park board will be reviewing it on August 15th.
Okay.
And approve
And so
it.
it's annually reviewed to update as far as, no, now we have to go replace Miners Fish Bridge
Right.
kind of thing? Because that's an absolute that had to be done? Okay.
The park board was spending between $300,000 and $500,000 a year, mostly profit from Super Splash for capital projects. Carnegie West is a prime example. In the last couple of years, we haven't had the funds to do that.
But I thought you said that Super Splash lost money or to a loss of $16,000 last year.
Correct. It was profitable in the early 2000s. It's not.
Right. And so where did that $16,000 come from to make up, I mean, since there was a loss of revenue from Super Splash?
Comes from the park general fund.
So that came out of the park board, or the park,
Right.
the general fund, not the reserve.
Correct. We don't touch the reserve to cover those type of operating costs.
Oh, for operative costs.
Those are operating expenses, staff salaries and building and grounds maintenance and that type of thing.
Okay. Okay. I'll let somebody else ask questions. Go ahead, find my other ones.
Mr. Azer.
Thank you. I think I understand a little bit where you're coming from, and it seems to me that the park board and park department has made an effort to write off their depreciation costs through different funds that they set aside. Few companies ever do this. That's why you go into malls and shopping centers that can't afford to fix up their parking lots because they don't have anything put aside for it. They just spend it. So I see what you're doing or what you've attempted to do, and I do commend you for that because it's the only way that we could continue our parks. I do have a line of thinking I'm just trying to follow here. Number one is it indicated that we had 171 acres of parks, and the recommended national standard, we are somewhere around 467 acres short. And then also, and I was trying to think back to what your budget was, and I was thinking it was somewhere around $1 million, $1.2 million. What is your annual budget approximately?
About $2.2 million.
$2.2 million, okay. And then the second question is, I noticed that you keep very accurate records at Super Splash. He had 41,000 guests in 2010. Do you keep any records of the guests that use other facilities? Well, how many people are on the picnic grounds? How many are on the softball field? How many are... Because when you look at the parks are made for public use for park purposes, games, watching, the movies, etc. So, truthfully, the $2.2 million budget is for park use. We're providing parks, and all the people that use all those facilities are benefiting from the $2.2 million that this government has created for park purpose. One of the things that perhaps bothered me a little bit was when you indicated that there were 41,000 guests at Super Splash, and even though they lost $16,000, it still served 41,000 guests. And I'm just going to suggest that when you're looking at the, you had 2.2 million, so you got 2.1 million plus $16,000 is very little money to be spending on 41,000 guests when you compare the other 2.1 million. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And I think that when you consider all your options with Super Splash, it would be good to try to account for the number of people that are playing tennis, that are using your picnic areas, and all those things that we spend money for in the parks, to utilize that 2.2 million for services for the parks before we very quickly sign off a facility in a city who already is short park services by 467 acres, and we can't find more land. I think that Super Splash really has done very well, quite well, on the fact that they serve so many guests for so little money compared to the rest of all the other facilities. That would just be, so you might start keeping those figures before you start cutting services.
I should add, we do track attendance across the board for shelter reservations, program participation. It's hard to quantify the number of people who show up for a movie in the park night, but we have a pretty good idea. Now, walkers, bikers, that's a different story. We don't keep as accurate a records as we probably could on that type of thing.
Right, and I think truthfully, having been in a profession where we sample all the time, you sample numbers and you come up with really pretty good figures by different methods of sampling. You're not literally out there every day counting everybody that walks through the door. But through scientific sampling procedures, you come up with a pretty accurate number. And I think it's something to consider. It's, like I say, you don't have to do it every day and even every week necessarily, but the statistics procedures are so accurate. I just point out one thing I remember about 10 years ago. The media got so good at predicting winners of elections that they were predicting the winners of every precinct hours before those even closed. And they weren't counting the votes. They just had a procedure of a way to figure out how those numbers were coming in, and they were so good they made it illegal because there was no need to go back to the polls because they were so accurate, because we knew long. So we don't do that anymore. They're not allowed to do it. And I only point that out because, truthfully, we can do an incredible job with keeping pretty good record to park youth by using these procedures. So I do recommend that. I think our parks are good. I mean, I played tennis there, and I've obviously been in Super Splash a lot of years, so long before it became Super Splash, and other facilities too. I guess I would say this: if you ever really truly thought about closing Super Splash, for the kind of money that we can serve people, we might consider changing it to a community center. But it already serves 41,000 guests a year. That's not too bad. Thank you.
Mr. Kramer.
Guys, I do appreciate you coming out. Of course, I'm familiar with a lot of the stuff that you're talking about as liaison to the park board. One of the things, and I brought it up in park board meetings in reference to the tennis courts and the costs that we're looking at putting back into those tennis courts to bring them up to standards and make them where they're useful. And correct me if I'm wrong, we took grant money to build those tennis courts originally, and they have to be set aside as tennis courts in the future, from my understanding. My thought is, and of course, we've got a gentleman in Mr. Lightfoot that's the chair of our legislative committee. If we could get with our legislators and figure out any way where we could do a sand volleyball court out there and do a sand volleyball league, something different and creative to bring people in. I don't know how much use we get out of those tennis courts, and if $200,000 to $400,000 is something that that's a lot of money. But there might be a high level of interest in sand volleyball, and maybe we can get with our legislators to redefine that area where we could do some sand volleyball leagues and try to go a different direction. I do appreciate what you guys have put together tonight, and I appreciate my fellow aldermen in asking the questions that they're asking, and look forward to working with you guys in the future.
So that I understand, the Park Board leases the Little Blue Trace facility, right?
Correct.
Who's responsible for maintenance of that then? Do you take on maintenance for that then too? So we have total responsibility for maintenance and operation of that facility.
Yes, it is. However, during the girls softball league, they take on the maintenance during the period of time that they are there. But the ultimate responsibility does fall back to the park board, yes.
Do you recall roughly how much is allocated for maintenance and operation for Little Blue Trace on an annual basis?
Between 15 and 20,000. Lights, turf, seating, scrub control.
So we would have the same replacement cost set aside also then for that as shelters are needed, lights, et cetera. Okay. The other thing I think would be interesting, although we're pegged for having fewer parks for our size town, being the population, it'd be interesting to see that, you know, with 171 acres in a 10 square mile city that we have, and compare that, because I doubt that too many cities could hold a candle to what we offer from a parks opportunity and an acreage. For our size city, from an acreage standpoint, I'd challenge almost any area for that, because I think we've got a lot of great parks and a lot of fine facilities. I love the fact that you reported that they start signing up January 2nd, I think you said, for the coming year. That's phenomenal. And being out there at the fishing derby, I was real happy to see those park structures were filled up already. It was a good turnout, and I think that's part of the things that we as a public entity want to make sure that our parks are in good shape, that they are well attended, they are well maintained. So I think that's important, and I think the park board does a great job with that, as well as the parks department as well. Questions, Mr. Van Buskirk?
I'm curious, and maybe this was covered, I may have missed it, but the acreage that we have, park acreage, does that include the Little Blue Trace and Super Splash, those facilities?
Yes, it
is
does.
Included in that? Okay. I do have a question about staff. I noticed that there are 4 vacancies, vacant positions. Are you purposely cutting back on staff, or have those positions ever been totally filled, or what's the situation with that?
Those are positions which the park board has specified at one time as possible positions. We've elected not to fill those, so they're just sitting there vacant. We actually had when we added the one person for the right-of-way maintenance, there was one person there that's covered by from a sales tax standpoint. And when we had a person retire, we elected not to fill that position. So that kept us at the same level of 10 employees.
Well, I notice there are a lot of management positions listed, but not very many that are not. I'm curious, a couple of the positions under aquatics, an individual as the aquatic facility manager. Is that a full-time position?
Yes, it is.
Is an individual needed year-round
Once
to just concentrate on that?
Once the pool is closed and they get everything closed up, and they're probably looking at least a month after the facility closes to kind of get that wrapped up. And then they almost immediately, especially by the first of the year, they're into getting contracts out, getting people hired, getting the guards hired. Then they'll start training. So it's, they end up taking a lot of time, some time off in the fall, like November, December, for all the overtime they built up during the season. So he does keep pretty busy year round. And he also helps in the office some.
Okay. And so there are other assignments other than if you have other assignments for that individual. The same thing with the program division. I noticed an individual that's sports and special events, and certainly during the winter months, there's probably not a lot of that taking place. Is that?
Well, they do have, because they have volleyball and activities like that. That's inside activities that run through the wintertime.
Where are those?
They're at the schools.
Spring Valley, Robinson, like that. We run leagues.
Okay, good. I wasn't aware of that. Okay. So there are really no plans at this point in time to fill the vacant positions that you have?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Back to Ms. Melson.
I do have some clarification on, get my pages all messed up. With the, and now I can't find it, the cash on hand that you have is how much? As of like June 1st?
You're talking about non-committed cash. Is that correct? Just so I understand what you're talking about.
Right.
About $150,000.
So you have $150K. And so then when you go back to the 1.2 or 1.3 million dollars, is that just sitting in an account or is that invested somewhere?
I think
like with a percentage that you yield and earn, that kind of thing?
It is in an account, and I'm not sure at this point where it's...
It's in our UNB city fund. It did earn significant interest, and it was being invested by the park board. However, we've been paying bank fees, pretty high bank fees.
So, but if it's invested by the park board, so where is it being invested in then? I mean, is it like in mutual funds or?
Right now, it's in cash. It is in a money market or it's not CD. It's in the bank.
So basically, this money, the $1.2 million, is just in the bank.
Right.
And it's not earning any interest or anything because it's just sitting in a account without any investment potential to earn a percentage.
Right.
Park board has talked about investing those dollars, but we haven't done that yet.
Okay, and so how long has that been going on? I mean, has it just been sitting there for years and it's never been invested?
I'm guessing, I'm thinking probably the last 2 years, probably. I'm thinking. Time goes by, and I'm not real sure about.
So, but if it's been doing the last 2 years, is there something that it was an investment and now it's not? It just never was?
It was invested in CDs. And this is also something we've talked about. We need to get with Jeremy, and find out for sure where we stand on that, and, if we can get that invested.
Okay.
And whether we do it or whether this is part of something that Jeremy does, we need to work with him.
Well, and maybe that's something that y'all could get together and do, because that kind of goes back to my original question of having the financials to be able to look at that and kind of see, you got $1.2 million and it's just sitting in a bank account, so you're not getting any interest on it. And honestly, parts of that I have no clue, except for basic knowledge. But maybe that's something that you and Jeremy can get together with, and then perhaps together come back and present financials from the park board on where you stand with the $1.2 or $3 million, and perhaps come up with a type of investment kind of strategy or something that you can be able to utilize to help the park board along the way too. And that also would go towards, kind of developing that strategy, because, it's not city here and park board here. It's park board's part of this. The parks department is part of the city and responsibility thereof. So, maybe that's something that y'all can work together and make sure that that could happen. Let's see. And kind of along that line too of, with the Parks Department is part of the city. Do you guys have a purchasing policy? Do you follow the city's purchasing policy?
Yes, we do have a purchasing policy.
Oh, so you have your own separate one?
Yes.
Why is that?
We've had it, it's been there for years. It's updated. It does get updated. I think it's pretty much follows the city's
So when we did all the purchasing, updating to the purchasing policy and stuff, the park board didn't take on that, as a department, to follow the city's purchasing policy?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
We did not.
Maybe that's something else we could look at. And then also with, so maybe that also, like employee manuals, stuff like that, is that something that park has a separate one, or does that, they follow the employee manual and such that the city does? I guess I'm kind of confused at why there would be two things. When, if the city has their own purchasing policy, then I would assume park department, would follow that, as well as the other.
We do have our own. I know that it was provided for review. To my knowledge, we have not gotten it back, the review copy of that back yet.
So you provided what? Your employee manual to the city for review?
Yes.
Okay. Well, it just kind of sounds like there's some different issues there, maybe with the financials, the employee manual, and the purchasing policy thing that, perhaps as the city, we could work together and make sure that we're all on the same board and all following the same stuff, because it is still all under the umbrella of the city. Now I got more questions.
That's precisely why we just formed the committee tonight, to look into that very thing. Mr. Lightfoot.
Well, I just want to agree with Alderman Melson that I think, especially on like the spending policies, every other department has to follow a certain procedure, including the police department. If they want to spend a certain amount of money, they've got to come to the board and we have to approve that. I think the park should go along with that. And definitely, I would think that our finance department should look into the way the money's being invested, handled, and utilized. So I'm just kind of going along with that.
Mr. Van Buskirk? No. Mr. Mock?
Okay, we've talked about this before, and I know during the winter times about the events, this and that, I noticed that I read all the way through 35 pages and not one time was any events discussed. It was like the holiday lighting or anything like this. A few of the things like getting more involved, which we have discussed about with the holiday lighting or anything else similar to that. But I was wondering why that, of any challenges or anything like that, why none of this was not put into this brochure tonight. Could anybody answer that? I mean, I'd like to see, what I'd like to see is the parks work more, we're in it right now, with the city on financials, the events, anything like that too also, if we could. I mean, we discussed this last year. I thought it was going to be brought to us this year. When I read through it, I didn't see any of it. So was there any discussion on this or anything like that?
It has been discussed, and what it's come down to, and I'm sure it's an ongoing discussion, but at this point in time, the feeling was that we didn't have the staff, nor did we have any funds to step out further than where we are today.
Okay, and you're during the winter months, didn't have the funds like for the holiday lighting ceremony, or the let's go to the Summerfest or anything like that. I think there's a lot more that could be or put out with parks today, Parks and Rec, than what I'm seeing. And a lot of the people in Raytown feel the same way I do, about these certain type of events and this and that. I was sort of surprised about the investment when I was listening to the investment, where the investment for the last 2 years, there's been none. I had a few other things wrote down, but one other thing is the Minor Smith Park bridge, the dedication. Yeah, that looks great. I was just wondering when that project will be finished up.
Well, there's a punch list that we're working on, landscaping, seal.
I know you won't be able to sod quite yet, but
right. Crack sealing the parking lots, all of that in preparation for the September 10th bridge dedication ceremony.
Okay.
We've got about 8 things we need to do yet.
By the way, which is the largest park in Raytown?
I have to be cold.
By acres.
By acres, it's probably Little Blue Trace. I'm not sure. That would be my guess.
Little Blue Trace in Kansas City.
Well, actually, I think. There's 18. Yeah, Little Blue Trace is the biggest one. There's 33 acres there. And it looks like the next largest one would be Carnegie at 18 acres. That's included. That's on page 21 on the sheets. It shows what the acreage is for each one.
On 21. Okay, thanks.
Mr. Asia, you're next.
Yeah, just a few more questions. Before I personally get critical of your purchasing practices, I want to ask a couple of questions. When you purchase, do you work with other park departments, or do you just purchase independently?
We have a cooperative purchase agreement. We follow the city's purchasing policy more or less. We do have our own separate policy, but it does follow very closely the city's policy, and I'll be happy to get you a copy of that.
Yeah, and the reason I ask that is I don't know. I mean, submitting bids, we work with the MML that provides a lot of services to us, and purchasing is part of that. I didn't know whether you use the MML to do that. That's part of our practice. Do you go through the MML, what they call the statewide purchasing bidding process? And what that means is that they have different organizations that all bid and they get the entire state. Do you use that?
Yes, we use that. We did for the vehicle purchases that we discussed earlier. Went through the state purchasing agreement, and MML's a part of that. So we do competitively bid.
Right. So it doesn't sound like you're that far off.
Right.
Because that's one of the most critical reasons why we do that is to get the best price.
Sure.
And the other thing is, I know I brought up the numbers of people using our facilities, and what's really interesting, I mean, I am a recreation major, and one of the things that I remember from going to school years and years ago was the number of people utilizing per space. For example, we might be 400 acres behind other cities, but I know that when you go to the Kansas City Zoo, it's huge, and there's not a lot of people there compared to St. Louis. And when I say that is that you're probably getting a lot of people involved in recreations that are playing in your basketball leagues, in your volleyball leagues, and that's a pretty small space. And theoretically, that's what recreation is all about. It's providing an opportunity for people to do the things they love the most that they wouldn't have if it wasn't for the public government. So I think you're doing a great job, and I'm not hung up on the lack of space that we have, because we have a great school district. They have great facilities. It sounds like you're really utilizing that. And again, you know, back to Super's place, that's not a very big pool. That's not a very big water park. And 41,000 people is utilizing that space really, really well. The only thing that bothered me a little bit is when they kind of revealed, or Charlotte's questions indicated that you had that money sitting there, and you probably could have made the $16,000 you lost on Super Splash. And it kind of bothers me thinking you might close a facility for losing that money when you had money sitting there where you could have made money. So kind of incongruent. So
We've been at this for about an hour and a half, I think. Turned out to be one of the longest presentations. I'm going to allow one more question. I'm going to go to Mr. Kramer for it.
Real quick, and I forgot to ask you guys, have we done anything with Public Works as far as communicating to maybe share equipment? Where has there been any contact with Mr. Knoll? Say like if we've got a mower that gets used Monday and Tuesday through Public Works, and maybe it could get used Wednesday and Thursday through the Parks Department. I'm just picking that as an example. Have we looked at equipment sharing in this time because we are a complete city, where we can kind of save some of those revenues to go to right-of-way projects and stuff like that?
We do some equipment sharing with Public Works, concrete saws, and they've been able to help us with the cherry picker to change lights in the park and flags and so forth. We could possibly work closer on mowers, but I can assure you our mowers are busy nearly every day from, May through September, but we could work closer on equipment sharing and that type of thing.
Well, and I just picked mowers because that's the first thing that popped into my head, but if they've got a piece of equipment that they use once a month, and Parks Department's got a piece of equipment that they use once a month, why can't we share it? Because it's the citizens of Raytown, it's their tax dollars.
Sure.
And I think in the mindship of stewardship, we should do the best we can to stretch their dollars as far as we can. That's all I've got.
Well, let me suggest that I started earlier on talking about this committee that we've got formed to help with resolutions between the Board of Aldermen and the Park Board. therefore administering the Parks Department. I would ask that if any other aldermen have further questions that they'd like to put before either Mr. Kramer, Mr. Mock, Ms. White, Kinman, or myself, and or Kevin Bogie and the board president, let's get those out as soon as possible, because we do want to meet and start that process of resolving where we're at. I'd like to start that as early as next week. So if you have further questions, I'm going to cut this off and ask that you send those questions to one of those people I just named. So thank you. Thanks, gentlemen, for your time tonight. We're going to move to the legislative session, finally. First item on the is the consent agenda. Would any one of the aldermen desire that any one of those items be pulled off the consent agenda at this time? We've got a motion in a second to approve the consent agenda. Is that correct? Discussion on that. Call a vote, please.
Alderman Kramer?
Yes.
Alderman Lightfoot?
Yes.
Alderman Van Buskirk?
Yes.
Alderman Pardue? Alderman Mock?
Yes.
Alderman Nelson?
Yes.
Alderman Azier?
Yes.
Alderman White?
Yes.
Very good. Moving to the regular agenda, ask the clerk to perform the reading on item number 2, please.
A resolution amending the fiscal year 2010-2011 budget by transferring $10,000 from the jail detention line item to the laboratory fees line item.
Chief Lynch, anything to add, sir, on your resolution tonight?
Just that we're requesting to transfer funds to pay lab fees, kind of an unusual year with lab fees with some of the homicide trials that are coming up. We have a homicide trial coming up in January, and the prosecutor's office has asked for additional DNA testing. Came to you probably a couple of months ago, and Ms. Melson asked if it was going to be enough, and I said I didn't know. And so anyway, we feel that this will cover us till the end of the year. Hopefully it will.
Question of the Chief, Ms. Melson.
And so the request for this initial, or this $10,000 would cover the rest of 2011?
Well, it's just like I just reiterated probably from a meeting we had here 2 months ago, and you asked me that question back then, and
right.
I said, hopefully so.
Right.
And I'm going to tell you,
right.
hopefully so. The only DNA testing, it costs for each swab you do, it costs a certain amount of money, and every time the prosecutor asks us to more, it costs us more money.
Right.
So, yeah, I hope so. And you know, it's, like I said, it's an unusual year. The Clemens trial that was earlier in April of this year resulted in conviction of the person that did that, and so there was a lot of money used for that trial. So,
right.
so hopefully.
And so this is kind of a banked amount then, and then you draw down out of it?
Would you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Like the transfer, the $10,000 is a banked amount, so you have that plus your remaining $4,000 or $4,200 in the account, and then you draw down from that?
Yes. I think if we add up the 632 and the or 1,100, it might be actually a little bit over.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so then you're bringing that amount back up to draw down if needed.
Yeah, according to Lieutenant Beitling, hopefully the remaining amount that we have in the budget should last us until November 1st.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Van Buskirk.
I make a motion that the resolution be approved.
Second.
Mr. Van Buskirk's got the motion to approve, seconded by Mr. Kramer. Further discussion on item number 2 before we vote. Call the vote, please.
Alderman Van Buskirk?
Yes.
Alderman Kramer?
Yes.
Alderman White?
Yes.
Alderman Nelson?
Yes.
Alderman Azier?
Yes.
Alderman Lightfoot?
Yes.
Alderman Mock?
Yes.
Thanks, Chief. Item number 3, please.
A resolution authorizing execution of a professional engineering services agreement with Cook Flat Strobel Engineers, PA, for the design of 350 Highway Bicycle and Pedestrian Trail in an amount not to exceed $126,100.
Mr. Mill is our Public Works Director. Anything to add, sir?
Just that we have discussed this project in the past when we when the board approved the agreement with MoDOT for the execution of the grant. We've been negotiating with Cook Flat and Strobel over the last month and a half to arrive at an agreeable fee. I had some reservations along the process and consulted with MoDOT. They negotiated a significant more amount of contracts than I do here at City of Raytown, and at the final sum, they were reassuring to me that we had a very competitive scope and that the fees for it were reasonable. So that's why I felt comfortable coming forward to the board recommending approval. Here to answer any other questions you may have.
Questions, Mr. Knoll?
Second.
Ms. White's got the motion to approve, second by Mr. Kramer. Discussion, Ms. Melson.
On the, it's page 1 of 2, Exhibit B, it's got mileage listed, and then it's also got travel. Is that kind of the same thing?
Part of this consultant team is a consultant that's located in Florida. That is part of their cost of travel from the consultant from Florida. All of that is built into that not to exceed. Some contracts that we've had in the past actually had that as a reimbursable. This is actually part of the contract.
Okay.
So we have a set fee with a maximum on this project.
And so all the compensation that is, well, I guess one of the things that stood out was number 18 on page 8, verbal statements non-binding. So everything that is contractual between the city and this party is definitely described in all in writing?
Correct. It's what's correct. We're following the fee hour details with that scope of service that's on the left for those items. So that's what they're contractually bound to perform for us.
Okay. And so basically this $126,000 is for the design from, I think it's, what is it, Blue Ridge to Maple.
That is correct.
Only on 350.
Correct.
Right. Well, unfortunately, when this was passed, I was out of town and didn't get to voice my opinion, but, you know, and this was through a grant through MoDOT. The 433.
Correct. It's a sub-allocated
For
grant.
the construction of it. We have. Correct. All right. But I still have a real problem with this. Anytime I'm there, and I did see somebody trying to bike down 350 highway, I think that it's a very short distance because I don't know how they're going to get to there, and then I don't know when they hit Maple what they're going to do. And so that's my real problem with it. And then also the affidavit of work authorization, is that part of our copy or is that the very last page?
Correct. That's what they need to execute. I actually have copies of the executed contract that they have sent back to me since that point.
Okay. And so the date of the 2009 on there will be updated?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Van Buskirk.
The 116,000, is that now is that coming from the grant money or is that part of the, I can't remember the exact amount, 200 or 250,000 out of city coffers?
That comes from city coffers, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions? I want to point out a couple things. We certainly don't have the funds, nor have we been allocated the grant from the highway department to do the entire length we would like to do. Like so many projects, you have to have a starting point. This is a significant piece of stretch that we're adding. I do see people bicycling, I do see people walking along 350, and it scares me, frankly, that there is not a better path for them to walk and to bike along 350 highway. It is happening out there. We need to make sure that we're doing everything we can to provide a safe environment for them. I think that it does start there at Blue Ridge. So there is a place to enter the bike path there. Yes, we don't have it going as far as we'd like to, but there are other years to follow, and there's other ARA funds that might be along the way as well. So I fully do support this. I hope that the board will act favorably upon it. And I think that we all saw, or many of us who attended that session saw the program called, that's put on by Mark. It had to do with streets. Complete Streets was the program, and this follows that plan. And I think that if we think about where we want to be down the road, this is the first stretch of it. You've got to have a starting point. We have funds available to us. It doesn't cost us a penny to use them. Yes, we have some of our own funds going into that. That's a part of keeping our infrastructure up. So I do hope that the board supports this resolution and acts favorably upon it. Further discussion? Call the vote, please.
Alderman White?
Yes.
Alderman Kramer?
Yes.
Alderman Van Buskirk?
No.
Alderman Nelson?
No.
Alderman Azier?
Yes.
Alderman Mock?
Yes.
Alderman Lightfoot?
Yes.
Resolution passes. There's no further business to come before the board at this time. I'm going to ask for someone to move adjournment.
So moved.
Mr. Kramer's got the motion to move adjournment.